Howdy everybody, David Meakin here, starting player with Connect More, and welcome to another edition of Avoid the Rules, a video of instruction and demonstration that helps ease rule understanding and learning. Easy start, and today I'm extremely excited and relieved to be presenting to you Machi Koro. So why is it that I'm relieved? Well, if you've been following my YouTube channel at all, you've seen I've been doing some fairly heavy games as of late. My last one that I did was Madeira, and that one, although very awesome, is extremely dense and was a hard one for me to wrap my head around and to be able to clearly explain in my last video. Before that, I did Kill Shakespeare. Although that game is not incredibly difficult or overly dense, it just was on a prototype version which required a lot of additional work for me. So along comes Machi Koro, just trucking along saying, hey, you know what, just reset, just take it easy, let's just throw some dice and let's just have a good time. And that's exactly what it's done, and that is what this game is going to bring to your games night. You're gonna have your showcase game, you're gonna have your centerpiece game, and this does not replace that. But this is a game that kind of whets your appetite for playing some games, or even kind of winds you down from playing the big game. But what's also pretty cool about this is you think you're going to just play this once, but you end up playing it over and over and over again, and it can sometimes kind of take over your whole game's night. But it's nice because even on any one game, if you're starting to kind of fall behind, your strategy's not quite working out for you, then it's over so quick, then you're like, you know what, I think I got that figured out, let's do that again. So it is nice, it is light, it is it says it plays 2 to 4 players, but really it's 3 to 4 players. I'll talk about that in my final thoughts. But let's get started with Machi Koro. Let's get you playing. Let's avoid the rules, and please stay tuned for my final thoughts after. Cheers. Okay, let's get started with Machi Koro. For the purposes of this video review, I've set up a 2-player game, a player here on the right and a player here on the left. And you'll see that they have an identical starting setup. They both have 6 cards and $3 as indicated by the 3 white tokens. And regardless of the number of players you're playing with, you'll always start with the same player setup, which I'll talk about in a second. And between all the players within easy reach, you're going to have the rest of Machi Koro, which consists of a whole bunch of different cards of different colors and abilities, which we'll talk about later in review. We have the bank, which is essentially the money in just different denominations, and we also have 2 dice, because this, after all, is a bone-tossing, dice-rolling type of game. So we're ready to get started. So before we get started, the first obvious question, of course, is, well, how the heck do I win? And the best way to answer that is to zoom in closer on the starting player tableau, and we can discuss it from there. So this is what a player's starting tableau looks like. Each player starts with 6 cards and $3 here by the 3 white dollars here. Now, 4 of these cards are actually under construction, which is indicated by these orange or yellow triangles here and the little bulldozer in the middle. Now, the first player to actually build each one of these cards, all 4 of them, wins the game. That's the victory condition. Now, in order to build one of these cards, you have to pay the cost in the lower left corner here. So you see that in order to build the station, a player on his turn would pay $4 and he'd flip it over, and woohoo, I've got the station. Not only does that help you advance towards the victory condition, because now you only have 3 cards left to build, it also gives you a benefit that you get to use for the rest of the game. And that takes me to the other 2 cards that you start off with. The other 2 cards you start off with are a wheat field and a bakery. And all the starting cards are indicated in the game because there's actually no cost on the bottom left corner of the card. Whereas you see all the other cards will always have a cost associated with them that you have to pay. So if we look actually at the wheat field that you'll see in the stack in the middle between all the players, you actually see that there's an actual cost associated with the wheat field that normally cost you 1. So that's how you tell what the starting cards are. The bakery as well, you'll see that there's an absence of a cost there. Whereas if you actually look at the bakery on the pile in between the players, there's an actual cost of value 1. So each player is actually going to start with one of these. So let's look at the anatomy of a card so it all makes sense to you. So I'm going to use one of these cards that actually has a cost associated with them so you can see everything that's on a card. The first thing you're going to notice is the actual number at the top of the card. This is the number that whoever is rolling the die has to roll. So if you're able to roll a 1, for example, then this card would yield you a benefit because the number on the top of the card actually matches the number of the die rolled. So then if that's the case, then you actually look at the description or what the benefit is at the bottom. It goes here, it goes get 1 coin from the bank on anyone's turn. So woohoo! So it doesn't matter who rolls the die. If anybody rolls a 1, I will get this benefit. And so if later in the game you actually start buying these cards and you buy another wheat field, you would just stack it like this in your tableau, and now you actually have 2 wheat fields. And should somebody roll a 1, you get 1 coin for this one and 1 coin for this, which would be a total of 2 coins. So you can actually start doubling up your benefits. So that's the anatomy of a card, and that's what it looks like. And then similarly, you're also going to start with the bakery, and you'll notice the bakery is a different color, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. And here it says get 1 coin from the bank on your turn only. But the added benefit here is it doesn't matter. You could roll a 2 or a 3. It just doesn't matter. You'd still get that same benefit. So the probability of you actually rolling this goes up. So now you know how you're going to win. The next logical question you must have is, well, how am I going to generate money? In order to flip over and actually build any one of these sites in my starting tableau, I actually have to pay a cost to be able to flip them over. And that they're not cheap. They range from anywhere from $4 all the way up to $22. And you're only starting with 3, that's not a lot of money. But remember, you're just, a little farmer and farmer's wife, and you're just starting off very little, but you have these big, grandiose ideas of building radio towers and a grand amusement park for your grandchildren to come and visit and play one day. So in order to do that, it's going to take a lot of loaves of bread selling in your little bakery in order to do that. So you're going to want to encourage other people to come and join your town, and that's essentially represented by these cards. By purchasing these cards throughout the course of the game and adding them to your tableau and into your town, I like to think of myself as basically the farmer tax collector. And so whenever these guys do well, i.e. their dice is actually rolled, then I get to come along and collect a tax. And so the more buildings I have that are actually working for me, the more money I'm going to generate, the better off I'm going to do. And if I can do that faster than the rest of the people, well, then I'll be able to flip over these cards in a very fast way and perhaps win the game. So the best way to show this, in fact, is by just showing you a simple how does the game actually play. So the very first thing you're going to do in your turn, you're going to take a dice and you're going to roll it. Or take a die or 2 dice. And here you see I rolled a value of 1. Now, regardless of who's rolling, everybody needs to be aware, all the players need to be aware of the dice result or the die result. And here everybody looks at a 1. Then you consult your tableau and you see if you have any cards with the value of 1 in it. And there's in fact an order in which the cards will pay out. And that is why I don't like this numerical setup of all the cards here in Machi Koro, because it just doesn't make sense. So give me a second, I'm going to reorganize these cards, and that will help me explain the order in which the die result is resolved. So stay tuned. Okay, so now I've reorganized the cards in a way to me that makes sense, and I'm going to go through and explain it to you. And for the purposes of clarity, I've got rid of everything else with the exception of just this one player's tableau, which is still in the starting setup. So you see I've organized the cards by color, and I've got red at the top, followed by blue, followed by purple, and followed by green. The reason why I like to organize it this way is because you don't need the cards here organized numerically. It just doesn't do anything. That's just us trying to be organized, but it doesn't make any organizational sense because most people, especially people who are not familiar with Machi Koro, you'll see they'll pick up a card and they'll read through it and they'll go, ooh, this is an expensive card. It's going to cost me $6. Here's a little symbol here. I wonder what that means. And I'm going to reorganize the cards again to show you some synergies with these symbols, but we'll get to that. And then they again read the effect of what the card will happen should a 9 be rolled. So they look at that and they go, okay, that might be interesting, and then they'll flip over this card and go, that might be interesting, and away they go. But if I organize it this way, it makes teaching the game very easy, because when you do roll the die like I just did, you have to resolve any payouts first. So if anybody other than you is going to receive money from you because of your roll, that happens before anything else happens. Well, the color of card that does that is the red, so it's on the top. So you would resolve those first. So let's take an example. So if we take a look here at the 3 card, so if you rolled a 3, if anybody else had this 3 card in their tableau, they would say, hey buddy, pay up. You get 1 coin from the player who rolled the dice. And then this is actually resolved in counterclockwise order from the person who actually resolved. So why is this important? Well, it is possible that if a player rolls a 3, in his own tableau, he might have the bakery, which again would affect him. And in someone else's tableau, they might actually have the cafe. So you see that in one card, the green card, the bakery, the player who rolled actually gets some money. Whereas the player who is not the player who rolled would actually steal some money from the person who rolled with the cafe. So you do the payout first, and that matters because you might be broke when you do the roll. So that's really cool, because then you go, sorry, I don't have any money for you, and then you turn right around and then you would actually get paid for having the bakery. So by organizing the cards in this way, it reminds you the order of resolution. Now these bottom couple rows, it really doesn't matter, but it's important to put the red ones on top because those are always resolved first. The reason why I put them in this order is because all the blue cards, should anybody roll that on anyone's turn, everybody gets paid out. And I really like the blue cards, and I'll just show you an example of this here again. So we'll look at the apple orchard. So here goes, get 3 coins from the bank on anyone's turn. And they all say that, on anyone's turn at the bottom. So it's nice to keep these organized as well, because blue basically is everyone's hedging their bets on the same numbers. And I love these cards because these are the cards that promote, group cheer. When, anybody rolls any of these numbers, you hear woohoo, and the whole table gets excited and everybody starts getting money from the bank. And so this adds energy to the games room. And that's one thing I really like about Machi Koro, especially are these kind of common, these blue cards where everybody benefits, because as the game goes on, most people kind of have these things and get a little level of excitement for actually seeing it rolled, especially when it's not on their turn. So again, we're going from cards that other players have in their tableaus, where all players have in their tableau, and now we're going down to cards that only you have in your tableau when you roll, and these are ones that only you can activate when you actually roll the number. So if we have the 6s here, and the 6s are colored purple because they're all very powerful cards. Now the main rule with the 6s that you have to remember is you are allowed to take 1 of each card, but no more than 1. So it is possible for you to have all 3 of the 6 cards in your tableau, but you cannot have multiple of the same card. And all the other cards that you see, the red, the blue, and the green, you can have multiple cards and basically double down on some of the numbers. So there is a lot of debate going on that I've seen on BGG, especially about these cards, whether or not you're only allowed to have 1 number 6 card, if you're allowed to have 1 of each number 6 cards. The definitive answer is on Tony Boydell's blog, and it is you have 1 of each. You're allowed 1 of each. And so these cards basically say if this is your turn, you can basically take things, or you get to attack the other players. And so this is still allowing, some player interaction. Now we've gotten to the color of cards where it's you, but then you actually still are interacting with somebody else on the table. And then finally, when you get down to the green cards, these are cards that only affect you. It only affects the person who actually rolled the dice. And so the way that all of these cards end, it actually says that you own at the bottom. So you get a certain benefit for everything that you own. And so similarly, each of these cards finishes with that statement, that you own. And so this basically means you rolled an 8 on your turn. Everybody else is kind of grumpy because they get no benefit, but generally these cards have a higher benefit associated with them because you only get the chance of rolling this number on your turn. So whereas the blue cards and the red cards, you might get that benefit on other people's turns should they roll one of these numbers, either a 3, a 9, or a 10, then you would benefit from them rolling, hopefully, if they have enough money to pay everybody out by the time it gets to you. Whereas when you get to the blue, well, then the bank is going to pay you out anyhow, and everyone does the group cheer. Woohoo! There you go. So for the purposes of this game, I like to organize it this way because when you do a die roll, everybody will look at their tableau, and then you resolve the cards essentially in this order. Now, essentially, beyond the red, it doesn't really matter, but I put this because it goes from basically people taking money from you to basically you just being all by yourself with some group interaction in between. That's why I organize it this way. So you roll the dice, you resolve the number, but in this particular case, I look at the tableau here and I have a wheat field. So I go, woohoo, I rolled a 1 and I get 1 coin from the bank on anyone's turn. So you simply go to the bank, you take $1 and you add it to your tableau. So there you have it. Now the last thing you can do on your turn then is you get to choose to buy one of these cards. Now you can only buy 1 card on your turn. And so by buying the card, you actually then just look at the value here on the bottom left corner, and that's the cost you have to pay to the bank. And then you just add that card to your tableau. So here, for example, I only got $4. This is an instance where if I wanted to, I could upgrade to the station. It cost me 4. But then I take a look around and maybe nobody else has got the ability to roll 2 dice. So maybe I'm not in any hurry to actually develop that. But it's always good to get something, especially in early going. So maybe I might say, okay, I'm going to buy this ranch here. I'll take $1. I'll throw it into the bank, and then I'll add it to my tableau. Now in your own tableau, this is actually where it makes sense to organize your cards numerically, because whenever anybody rolls a die, you just scan your cards and then you just see where the result is if you have anything. It's just easier to find that way. And then again, you see if you actually get a benefit from that. This is one thing that I really like about Machi Koro as compared to what a lot of people will compare this to, as a kind of a dice rolling, get resources type game as Catan, is sometimes in Catan, I'm kind of scanning the board whenever anybody rolls. I'm like, do I have that number? I think I got that number, and it takes me a while to kind of find it a little bit. Whereas here is kind of nice, you know, for us simpletons, it's pretty easy just to kind of go along and see exactly if you got a benefit or not. So this is one way to organize the cards, but what about some strategy? What's another way that we might be able to organize these cards that might make sense to you? Let me show you. Okay, so I've reorganized the cards kind of by symbol and some possible engines or strategies that might work for you throughout the game. Now this is by no means comprehensive, it's just kind of, again, highlighting some of the aspects of the cards and how they might be able to use together and get some synergies from them. Now, I want you to basically look at these cards here and treat this as essentially a matrix, where basically you have the inputs of the matrix and kind of the card that benefits from the engine, or if you will, that you're going to build. So the first row I want to show you are these 4 cards, where essentially they have a teacup symbol next to them, which is the cafe and the family restaurant. These 2 red cards, which are, again, if you recall, are the attack cards. And we also have the bakery, and we've got this symbol here. I guess it's a little shop, but I always think it looks like maybe it's a loaf of bread or a t-shirt. I always think it's a t-shirt. So anyhow, you have the bakery and you have the convenience store, and the convenience store has the same symbol as the bakery. Well, what's kind of cool about that is if we take a look at the shopping mall. Now recall, the shopping mall is in fact one of the 4 cards that you need to upgrade in order to win the game, but you can also use it to your benefit throughout the game, as you can with the other 3 cards as well. But here the benefit is earn +1 coin from your own teacup and t-shirt establishments. And this one here is not the cheapest one, but it's there. It's 10 bucks. It's the second cheapest. And so if you're able to flip that over in time and build up these types of cards, well, then it'll be to your benefit to actually have the shopping mall, and you'll earn income faster. But what's pretty cool about this is you'll notice that the family restaurant, somebody else needs to roll a 9 or a 10. And again, because it's an attack card, it's not if you roll it, it's if somebody else rolls it, then you get to take money should they have money to give you. Well, in order for anybody to be rolling 9s or 10s, somebody on the board would have needed to upgrade to their station, which allows you to roll 2 dice. And recall that the station is one of these cards that you need to upgrade, and this is the cheapest one to upgrade. So I put the station in here. It's kind of floating in the middle of this matrix, because although it is not mandatory for you to actually have the station in order to benefit from this 9 to 10 card, somebody needs to have the station so that somebody out there other than you might be rolling this value. And so if somebody has the station and you have the rest of this combination up here, you might find that to be quite lucrative for you. So let's go to the next example. So here we have the wheat field, and again this symbol here is a little sheath of wheat, I guess. Let's see if that can focus there. Yeah, so you see it's got a little symbol like this, and there's one other card that also has that symbol. It is an apple orchard, and we see that has that symbol as well. Those are the 2 cards that have it. Well, if we look at the very end, we have the fruit and vegetable market. And the fruit and vegetable market says, if this is your turn, it's a green card, get 2 coins from the bank for each of these little symbol establishments that you own. Now, again, I put the station. The station is necessary in order for you to get any benefit from the apple orchard, but it's not necessary for you. Just somebody else has to have it, because this is a blue card. You can build as many apple orchards as you want and not roll 2 dice, but as long as somebody else out there is rolling 2 dice, then the apple orchard might actually pay off for you. So that's why, again, I kind of float the station here, but I don't put the apple orchard on the other side, because it's not mandatory for you to actually be rolling 2 dice to get the benefit of that. So the neat, cool thing about this is kind of an all or nothing strategy. My wife likes this strategy. She loads up on the wheat fields, because a lot of people like to ignore them, especially the games I like to play, and then she'll maybe dabble in the apple orchard for a little bit, and then she'll go onto the fruit and vegetable market and load up on these, and these are all cheap cards. But the quicker she gets to this and actually gets the station, because she will need the station to be able to roll the 11 or 12, that's why I got this on this side of the station, the faster she gets to this, the more turns she's going to have that chance to roll a 12, because it's a lower probability. So the lower probability event, she wants to be rolling the dice more and more. And then essentially what will happen there, as soon soon as she rolls her 11 or 12, she'll get a huge payout because she has lots of these cards and lots of these cards which multiply on each other. So this is kind of a put everything into one basket and then just go for it. And this is kind of just a basic, really straight up strategy. And she does actually pretty well with that. Unfortunately for the rest of us. So then after that, then we go down to the ranch. And now the ranch is the only card here with a little cow on it here. And it's all by itself at a value 2. And then we have what's the cheese factory, which is a value 7. And it goes again, if this is your turn, it's a green card, get 3 coins from the bank for each of these cow establishments that you own. And this is a pretty expensive card at $5. But again, this is a nice strategy as well, because 7, statistically speaking, is the most probable number you'll roll with 2 dice. So again, I put the station. You must have the station in order to have a chance at this because it's a green card. And then you want to load up on ranches because then there's only one card with this symbol on it. So if you're really going to get some synergies with this, well, then you want to get as many ranches as possible. But it's not as important to get as many ranches as, say, for example, the wheat or the apple orchard, because the 7 statistically should be rolled more than the 11 or 12, so you should get more hits with that. That's this strategy there. And then we go down to the basically the gear symbol here, which is in the forest and the mine. And if we go and we look at the furniture factory, value 8, we see here then again, if this is your turn, green card, get 3 coins from the bank for each of the gear establishments that you own. And the first time I played this, the person that won just kept winning by tacking this strategy. Lots of these, and then furniture factories. And this is a fairly decent strategy to use because these are pretty good numbers, a 5 and a 9. But then again, it is not necessary for you to actually have the station to roll the 9 to get benefit from the mine. But somebody needs to be rolling 2 dice for you to get the benefit of the mine because again, this is a blue card, and it doesn't matter who rolls it, everybody will benefit from that. So here's some different synergies that to think about kind of in this matrix here with the station in the middle. So I like to point this out to new people because honestly, for me, especially in 4-player games with new people who aren't used to this type of game, although we casually say, oh, this is a filler, it's light, blah, 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 is we look for these types of symbols. We, as gamers generally, I hate using that word, but gamers generally will look for these types of combinations and try to seek them out and study each of the cards, where sometimes other people just want to chuck some dice and buy something. They might not see these kind of synergies that exist within the cards, and then they might get a very frustrating experience out of it because they realize that they're just not generating income everybody else, and people are rolling the blues and everyone's going woohoo and having a great time, and they're like, wow, this sucks. So help them out, point out some of these strategies. I left the other 2 cards that you need to upgrade over here, because these cards do help you, but they don't really interact directly with any one of the cards that I've shown out before. So these definitely do help you. And again, the 6 cards, again, you're allowed 1 of each. These help you as well, and they help you in the sense that they also help you relative to your competitors. You're able to kind of take down one of your competitors with you because they're more or less attack cards. You can trade, like for example, this one here, you can trade any of these non-Space Needle establishments with another player, and that symbol there is reserved only for the purple cards. And so the thing about this is kind of neat because, yeah, like right on, I get a trade, I get to screw up whatever synergies I see that you have in here, but then you're like, oh, darn it, that means I got to give up one of my synergies as well. So sometimes like, well, maybe that's not the best, or you might realize that you've changed strategies mid-game and you got some junk cards that you kind of want to get rid of. They're not really doing much for you, so you think, and so then you go, okay, well, I'll pass that on and screw up somebody else. Whereas, you look at the stadium, it goes, get 2 coins from all players on your turn only. So these are cards that help lift you up and help with your general engines, but not real directly tied to any of these symbols that I showed up before. So those are basically a couple different ways that I encourage you to actually organize the cards to get a feeling for how the game plays. But that's it. It is as simple as pie. Again, just as a recap, you roll the dice, you resolve any of the payouts first, and then everybody gets paid according to the cards in their tableau. And the cards are, you count each card once, so it's to your benefit to have multiple of the same card. Everyone gets paid, then you have the option of buying 1 card available to you. And if all the cards get pulled out of the deck, well then that's too bad, so sad. You got to find something else. And then the first person to actually have all of these cards flipped over wins. That's it. So stay tuned for my final thoughts. And welcome back! Oh man, wasn't that just refreshing? Normally at this stage in my reviews, I'm just kind of like, whew, I'm kind of beaten down by the game that I just did the avoid the rules with, because there's so much to talk about and there's so many little things and your brain is just a little bit fried. But this game to me, it's kind of like, I know most of you watching this are probably male and you probably will never admit this, but I know you're going to know what I'm going to talk about here. It's kind of like going into one of those kind of fancy candle stores or soap stores where they got little coffee beans, for you to kind of, neutralize your senses again. So once you kind of get sensory overload, then you just kind of come back to a good place. Or if you eat sushi and you kind of, in between dishes, you can have a little bit of that ginger to kind of neutralize your palate. Or if you go to like a fancy restaurant, they kind of have that nice sorbet in between, different courses for you to neutralize your palate. Well, that is Machi Koro for me. Is you got like the big meaty courses, you got the main meal, you got the main event for games night, and then in between you got this delightful little filler just to kind of bring you back and remind you about some of the basics of why you like gaming. And this is throwing some dice, playing some probabilities, and it just takes you right back to that. And for me, that's the best way I can think of this game. It's kind of one of these, it neutralizes my gaming palate is the best way I can describe that. Or if you want to go into something maybe a little bit more extreme, this might be the lemon after the shot of tequila. It's something that's just refreshing and kind of takes the taste out of your mouth from the last game that you just played and kind of gets you ready for the next game. So that being said, of course I like this game. I'm going to just talk about the reason why I made a mention earlier as to why I don't believe it's a good two-player game. Because as I pointed out in my review, I showed some of the different card synergies in that matrix that I showed. And for me, when you're playing two players, it's when you start seeing somebody attacking a certain strategy, you can basically have two decisions you can make. You can go, one, I'm going to try to take some of those cards away from them so that engine doesn't work so well for them, especially if they're getting some of the dice rolls. Or two, wow, that means they've left actually up an opportunity for me to chase another engine. Now it's just a race, and you're throwing the dice and you're trying to see who's going to get their payouts first, and it's a bit of a race. And personally, I don't really like that, because if I try to meddle in with their affairs, I just find it just makes the game longer. It doesn't really make it more interesting, it just makes it more longer. And this is the same complaint I have for Settlers of Catan for two players as well. If you have one person on one side of the island doing their own little thing, one person on the other side doing their own little thing, this is kind of the luck of the dice roll and what resources are actually being generated. And you could get over there and meddle with them, but then why? It just makes the game go on longer. So I do not recommend this as a two-player game. There's definitely way better games to play as a two-player game, but as a 3- and 4-player game, it is really, really nice. So I just want to kind of get that out of the way. The other thing that I don't understand, I'm going to be a total hypocrite reviewer when I say this, is most games when I open it up and I look at the cards and I just see nothing but symbols, and you see like on the rules a whole list of symbols, like why can't they just write what they want me to do? That'd be so much easier. And I get it that it's nice to have not to have a language dependency in the game, and I understand. And this is one of these games, I open it up and on the cards it's got all the text on the bottom, and my first reaction was like, oh, they could have done this with symbols. And especially, coming from Japan, if they would have done this, made this game language independent, they could have gone directly into been assimilated more into the North American market. And so I'm not going to be someone who's going to complain about something without offering a solution. So here I kind of printed up a few things, and this is by no means proved or anything, but it's kind of what I was thinking is, for example, for the blue cards, where the cards where everyone benefits, at the bottom of the card, you could just basically put the payout that you get here and a bunch of arrows pointing out that no matter who rolls, everyone gets paid out a buck. And then similarly, for the red cards or the attack cards, you could just basically, again, put how many coins you're going to get from the player who actually rolled, and this shows you that if you're actually rolling, there's a gap in the arrows there. If you're actually rolling, you don't get the benefit, but you get the benefit if anybody else is rolling on their turn, and then they got to pay you, and so the arrows go back towards you. And then similarly for the green cards, you could just have, again, an arrow pointing back towards you, saying, okay, on your turn, you would get whatever this payout should you roll it. So like for me, that would make sense. And the reason why do I care about this kind of symbology? Why would it be neat to have? Well, because I tried playing this with my kids, and I understand that the colors of the cards also represent what type of card it is. I get that. But sometimes just having a symbol, especially showing my kids, saying, okay, where the arrows are pointing out, it makes teaching the game so much easier. People don't have to remember. They can just look down, and they don't always have to go, whoa, what was that blue card again? Or what was that again? And especially, for me, it just makes things smoother. If I was to do this again, I just put a little symbol there on the bottom. You could get away with all the text. But that's just a complete aside. Now, the other complaint I've seen about this, and I touched on a little bit on the review, is some people just get shut out. And again, that's basically people who, when they study the cards, because it is a fairly big matrix when you sit down to play it, and if you're not used to playing these types of games, you're not going to sit and kind of study over all the different cards. You're going to learn the cards over multiple plays, but there is a type of people, I know I'm the type of person, you're going to go through and read the cards and look for symbols and try to understand, well, how is this all connected? What was the designer trying to do here? And not everybody's going to get into that. If you're watching this video, chances are you are that type of person who would want to actually kind of go through and look at that. So what you're going to find is if you play with, especially a 4-player game, and so with a bunch of new people, and this is kind of, you're using this as you know, an introduction to gaming, which is an awesome game for doing that. If people aren't looking for those types of synergies, they may find that they get some numbers that just aren't helping them at all, and they're not getting any income, and they might start getting a little bit frustrated. And I've actually seen that with some new players with this game. Similarly, like when you are in Settlers of Catan, if you aren't generating the resources that you need to build and nobody wants to trade with you, well, then you're just like, oh, this sucks. I can't believe this game is so good. But the advantage that this game has over a Catan, and I hate making always these comparisons, but hopefully they'll help align some of the thoughts, is the advantage over this is there's always cheap cards out there, and there's always an ability for you to say, okay, that's not working. You can always try to get into another engine. You can always try to get some different cards. You can always try something different, where sometimes Catan, you're just landlocked and that's all you can do. So I find that this game is a little bit more forgiving, and in that way I find it's better for newbies, just because it's better for newbies just because it allows them opportunities to kind of slip around and kind of feel their way in the game a little bit better. And the other complaint that I've seen that some people say, especially on BGG, is some people are complaining about, well, maybe this game might be too much of the same thing. You only play it a couple times and then you'll see the repetitive, you'll see the strategies like what I pointed out to you. Now my response to this is, for any game that is less than 30 minutes, is I do not engage in this type of conversation. For example, one of my favorite games, a great game to play, is cribbage. That is an awesome game. I think most people will agree that they really enjoy sitting down and having a game of cribbage. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a classic game. Now, you want to talk about being the same, 15-2, 15-4, a pair of 6, a pair of 8, and one for Mr. Nibs. Well, it doesn't get much more than the same than that over and over again, but I keep coming back. I like it. It's classic. It's really enjoyable because it's not a long game. It's just something to pass the time. Neither is Machi Koro, so I'm going to take that argument, just throw it out the window. So those are all kind of some of the arguments, some of the things that I've seen that are on the negative side of Machi Koro, but again, they're not overly negative. And just to finish up on my comparisons with a Settlers of Catan, is the one thing that Machi Koro does not have is trading. So if trading to you is something you really like with Settlers of Catan, well then, of course, this game will not replace that. But for me, the trading in Settlers of Catan, okay, it's necessary, but it's not the reason why I play. And so for all of those reasons and these comparisons that I've made, this fires Settlers of Catan, because let's talk about the good things of Machi Koro. The thing I like about this game that really gets me excited about it is the variable probability. The probabilities change throughout the game because you only start with 1 die, and so then people are only rolling 1 through 6. But then eventually people, as they upgrade and they decide to start rolling 2 dice, well then the chances of you getting certain cards rolled, especially say the wheat field, that becomes 0. Or if you continue only rolling 1 die, well then you'll still have that probability of it occurring, but even then it'll only occur on your turn if you're the only person who's actually rolling 1 die. So I like that because it forces you to look around, see what other people are doing, seeing what they're rolling, and then modifying and kind of tipping your strategy throughout the game to kind of match the playing characteristics of the people around you. Whereas, again, in Settlers of Catan, it's a static probability. All the numbers are laid out on their areas, and then the probabilities don't change at all because it's always going to be the same. Everyone's always rolling 2 dice. So I really like that variable probability. It adds a different level of thinking to the game and a little bit of anticipation to the game. And then you can play different strategies. Maybe I want to play just 1 die the whole game and let other people do the work for me. Or maybe I want to jump straight to those 2 dice and go for the 11 or 12 roll because I need to get as many tosses as I can to increase my chances of actually being able to get that number. So I think that's really an awesome element of the game. I like that kind of tipping point and whether you choose to actually hit that tipping point within any one game, because I've seen people win both ways. So I really like that. The other benefit here, again, another reason why it fires Settlers of Catan for me is time. It plays quick. It's like that. It's lickety-split. You sit there, throw some dice, and you're done. And it just does not overstay its welcome. And the cool thing I like about this, for this style of game, that's as long as I want to play it. And then you might say, well, wait a second, but I thought, you know, maybe you were mentioning before in your intro that, well, this is the type of game that perhaps you might end up playing over and over and over again, and eventually takes over your whole night. Yes, but the reason why that I like the time of it, because sometimes you're playing a game and it's just not working out for you. You're just like, oh, I'm not getting anything to work. Well, no problem. The game's over, then start again. I still enjoy the experience, but sometimes it's a frustrating experience, especially if things aren't going your way, and you know you're still staring down the barrel of another hour of this. You're like, oh man, this just isn't working out. But then you go, okay, well, the game's almost over. Maybe next game I can reset. So even if you're going to play multiple times over and over and over again, the actual limit of each game is quite refreshing, because then if you do get in that situation, no problem. And the other minor thing I talked about as well, compared to Settlers of Catan, I like having your own tableau so you can find your results quite quickly. And the last but most important reason why I like this so much better is it's like playing craps. It's got that real kind of party atmosphere to it. I like it because it just infuses the game room. Every time I play it, infuses an energy. When people all roll, you know, when you get the group cards, the blue cards, or even the attack cards, and lots of people have them, like woohoo and high fives, and you know, it's really good. And especially for new players, that is a really positive energy to have. And also for in big gaming areas, it's really neat to infuse the game area with that level of energy. And there's other games out there that do it, but I really like the one that this does. And frankly speaking, for me, this is, when you're playing this game, you're essentially taking bets. You're wagering on what's going to pay out, and basically the wager is represented by giving you a card back. But I'm sure somebody out there, you could make like a craps-like table with this. You could put all these numbers in here, and the cost to place a wager in any one of these numbered areas would vary based on basically the cost of the card. But you could make this like a craps table and then play exactly the same with just a little bit of engineering, and it'd be the exact same feeling as far as I could tell. But I like that because it brings a certain level of energy, and that's just an energy that for this style of game I have not seen. So for all these reasons, I just really enjoy this game. I hope that you will have a chance to check it out, and I hope that this has given you some good decision points of whether or not this game might be good for you. So as always, please feel free to leave a comment below. Come check me out on Facebook, Connect More Board Games, or subscribe to the YouTube channel, give me a like. That would be really great, and I look forward to doing the next video for you. Cheers!